listeners and viewers. I'm here today with Itzhak Beery. Itzhak Beery is an acclaimed author and globally recognized shamanic teacher, healer, public speaker, and trip leader. Raised in an Israeli kibbutz, he had a fine art career and owned an ad agency in New York City. A midlife crisis transformed him from a skeptic into a dedicated spiritual seeker. Since 1995, he has integrated teachings from his indigenous and Western mentors and devoted himself to nurturing a new generation of healers. Beery was initiated into the circle of 24 Yachaks of Imbabura in Ecuador and with the Amazonian Kanamari Pahe in Brazil. He founded shamanportal.org, the Andes Summit, and SPQR magazine, and co-founded the New York Shamanic Circle and Amaru Sanctuary in Ecuador. He received the Ambassador for Peace Award from the Universal Peace Federation and the UN. Also, Itzhak is the author of 3 books. One, The Gift of Shamanism, Visionary Power, Ayahuasca Dreams, and Journeys to the Other Realms. The second one, Shamanic Transformations, True Story of the Moment of Awakening, and Shamanic Healing, Traditional Medicine for the Modern World. So welcome to the show, Itzhak Beery. It's so nice to have you here with me today.
I am absolutely honored to be with you.
Well, thank you. So I want you to know that I have all 3 of your books. And I know a little bit of your backstory, but our viewers and our listeners may not. So let's start with that story about your midlife crisis and how that led to a very curious awakening. So take us through that period in your life, if you would.
Well, I moved to the United States to study art. I was like fine artist. I had galleries, shows, and museums and stuff, and so I mean that was really my career. And for my to support myself, my wife, and my children, I had to do something, right? So I was a graphic designer in Israel, so I continued to do work here. Then somebody offered me to become partner with him, and I became a partner in advertising agency. I moved on my own. And I really felt like this is like a great idea, like bringing good creativity to the masses. And New York City is like one of those challenges. And for a while, I was like really into it, into the martini lunches and into the other stuff. I'm sure you remember those days. And we got a lot of awards for our creativity. I work for Gucci, Revlon, Ferragamo, Elal, and other companies like that, and I did small things for large companies, big things for small companies. But at the end, with all the awards and all of that, I just felt empty. I felt like I'm not doing what I came here to do, and I didn't know what it was. And so slowly, I found myself really getting into depression. Luckily, I got a book about spirituality, about Hawaii, and by Hank Wasserman, a spirit walker. And I read it on my way to Hawaii, where I was teaching goal achievement game. How do you achieve your goals in business, in life? And it really changed my life. I mean, he was describing a workshop he took with a guy named Michael Harner, which when I came back to New York, he showed up. And so, I mean, I think that one thing led to the other, but I think it's the idea that sometimes around the age of 38, 40, we get to see what we already achieved. And I think that I pretty much achieved what I wanted, but it really wasn't enough for me. I didn't know what else to do. And then, so I got into the deep depression, and then that book led me to take a shamanic workshop. Then it took me into Ecuador. I went with John Perkins to Ecuador, and There, I met. I had a series of healing sessions, Olympias, with a teacher named Don Jose Joaquin Pineda from Iluman, the village in the high Andes of Ecuador, close to Otavalo. And that's really changed. He like did something that opened my third eye, and I started to see, or I allowed myself to see, and it was really quite amazing. Um, so for a few years, I was still doing advertising, and I was hosting him, and I was helping him out in healing sessions here in New York, because he used to come 6 months to New York City. So I worked with him well quite a lot, like maybe thousands of healings throughout the 3 years. And he was my teacher. He was really my in many ways. It's not like in the Western way of apprenticeship. It's really about work, serving, doing the stuff that you need to do in order for you to do it then by yourself. Um and apprenticeship is just something very difficult to do. It's about the death of your ego and allowing to serve your master. And so that was my teacher. And then I met a couple of years later. I met another teacher, Dr. Bernardo Piacheto. He was from Brazil. His spiritual name was Ipupiara, and I worked with him quite intensely for 12 years until he passed. And with him, I organized trips to the Rio Negro area, to near Manaus in Brazil, and I also brought people to work with Don Jose Joaquin Pineda in the Andes. So I have that, and I also worked a lot with people from the Shua, from the Kichwa, and the Psychopai in the Amazon of Ecuador. So my tradition is actually kind of like the high Andes and the low land of the Amazon. And yeah, I mean the journey that I had was I think it's quite typical to people, to men or people in this age group, where you don't have any more need to impress anyone, and you really want to make a dent in people's life, to leave a legacy, to do something that is meaningful, what it's about. That's what the midlife crisis is about. It's about reshuffle your priorities, and it's very difficult time. And I can see my kids now going through it, but I have a different perspective of it. I'm allowing them to feel terrible, because I know that this is what they are struggling with, is to find the uniqueness of their life purpose. It is absolutely important time. It's a time that before you gather yourself and become the mentor and the teacher. Um, and I do believe that there are different time in our life that is correlated to our hormonal level, and for that's very physical, that we have to follow. We have to listen to that. We have to listen to our physical body, emotional body, and spiritual body, and flow with it, and we can resist it. So here I am. I am now 74. So I've done uh, pretty well in that area, and I'm not quite sure that I'm going to stay there forever. Maybe maybe I need to find another mountain to climb on. Who knows?
Well, I want to pick up on a few of the threads that you've shared just so far in that brief introduction. The first one is Michael Harner, who you described as this guy. Now, I'm not sure if you even know this, but my academic background is as a cultural anthropologist. So I'm very much familiar with Michael Harner's work. And Michael Harner, for any of the viewers or listeners out there who are not familiar with Michael Harner, he was an anthropologist. He lived in New York. He taught at the New School for Social Research. And he conducted his field work in South America among healers, shamans, uh, various people over the course of time. And he created something called core shamanism. And his main idea was to strip away the cultural context and come up with a universal set of practices that a person could do, and called it core shamanism. Now, the reason that I'm bringing it up is, interestingly enough, you said this guy, Michael Harner, as kind of a throwaway, and then you started talking about the specific people that you had studied under, meaning that those that you did study under, it was very much within a cultural context. Now, what Michael Harner did that was kind of different at the time that he was creating all of this core shamanism was to reduce everything to something that you could do by taking a weekend workshop. Now, I see that there is an upside and a downside to that. You know, the upside to it is you certainly have an experience. The downside is that you don't get the cultural framework and even the safety of a container of a particular person within that culture, somebody explaining it to you, somebody creating a ceremonial context that their people adhere to. So there's a lot of up and downside to this idea of core shamanism. I mean, this is my opinion. I just want to get your take on it.
You have to remember that prior to Michael Harner and John Perkins, Michael Harner first, the word shamanism was not even in the lexicon of people. They didn't even know what it was. And so Michael, he have a great contribution to the renaissance of the shamanic movement, or you call it the awakening. He is part of the awakening wave that washed over us now. I had an incredible experience with him, and I really thank him a lot for that. The ability to see into to the unseen world, bring information that was precise and helpful for very, very, very many people. And I think that what he which he did best, is to create more of an academic type of a way for Westerner people to understand what shamanism is. I personally never met a shaman that actually used Michael Harner's system. So I think that can tell you everything about it. They don't really know what he's talking about. I'm not saying that what he's talking about is not right. It's get the results, of course, but it's not what shamans do. Not in the Amazon, not in the Andes, and not Native American. I mean, I work with many shamans, from the Inuit to Mongols to Siberia to Native Americans to I mean, you name it, every country almost. None of them are working in the same way that Michael Harner devised, and it doesn't mean that it doesn't work well. You know, it does. But as you said, it takes away the cultural experience of people, for the people who are following him. And so I call that shamanism boom boom boom, because it's really all based on the drum. And you have to understand that the drum is not used in South America and other places in the world for the shamanic work. Not for that, but maybe for different things and different type of drums, but not necessarily the Mongolian style or Native American style. So I think that the danger was or is that many people in the Western world think that Michael Hunter's system is the original system. It's the only one. It's the authentic one, and then they follow it. In many ways, it's also became more of a psycho shamanism work. It's really more about soul retrieval, all of that things. And I personally use that too. Don't get me wrong. But I also am very grateful to John Perkins that I went with him to the Amazon and to the Andes for getting his hands dirty, getting more into the gist of things, or like talking to the river, talking to the to the trees, being in the mud houses, and being in this malokas, in the ceremonies houses, and more the, the intimate connection with the tribes and their culture and the music and the sound. And so I think all of it can live together. But I personally, in my preferences, is to I am for direct experience. Not I'm not quite good at schooling or academic. I actually never studied more than 12 years. Since I never did college, or I never have any PhDs or all of that stuff. But that is my way. I'm autodidacta, and like I won almost all the advertising awards in the United States. I never went to school for advertising or for design or anything like that. I won many awards for design. I was a designer, but I never had a certificate. Like I don't have a certificate for shamanism because my friends, teachers, mentors in the Amazon or the Andes never think about it like that at all, because it's just not part of their life. It's either you can do it or you don't do that. If you continue to do that and people will get the benefit of it for it, and you do miracles or healing, then people will come to you. That means that you are a yachak or healer, and then a taita, so they recognize not your titles. You can come with any titles that you want to the Amazon, but if you are abuser of their culture, they will throw you out. I mean, that's I'm sure you know that. But so my thing is that I am incredibly in debt and with grateful to Sandra Ingerman and to which she's a good friend, and to Michael Hunter for all of that work. And I work with Hank Wasselman, I work with John Perkins, I work with Sandra Ingerman, with Michael Hunter, with many of those people, Tom Cowan and Nan Moss, and I mean all of those people are amazing people with really good intention, and they do amazingly good work with our Condor brothers and sisters. I personally look at myself more as a bridge. I see it as a way for me to teach them what we know here, but also to bring their teachings and their desires and prayers and dreams into us, into our life. So although I chose that direction, or that direction chose me, I don't. I think that the other way of practicing shamanism, or I call it more clean shamanism. So I call what I do is more like, with your fingernails in the ground,
Down
This is
and dirty shamanism.
a what?
Down and dirty shamanism.
Down and dirty shamanism. That I like that a lot because I think that it's you have to be with the elements to truly understand what's the intimacy that you create with those elements. Build your knowledge. Uh, Journey to the essence of an element is a little different, because you don't get dirty, you don't get into the water or into the fire or into the earth or into the air. Like like I had a wonderful teacher who just passed away, Alberto Tasso from Ecuador, who was one of my most important teachers, who all his teaching was really about befriending the elements in such a way that when you talk about water, it's not just water for drinking or sin gazoz or with gazoz. It was really about the essence, the feeling, the knowing of water, the knowing the drops, and the knowing the rain, the snow. So it is creating that kind of intimacy between all the elements allows you at the end to take all of that knowledge and beauty and wisdom and bring it into the fifth element, the Ushai, which is the most important way of us to connect to the mystery, to the Hatun Pachakamak. So there's no replacement for self-knowledge or for self-experience, because at the end is what shamanism is. It's not the ability just to dream, because we all dream. We all see visions. We all have daydreams. The question is, what do you do with it? And also, how do you bring it to life? That is the teaching of the shamans that I work with, the indigenous people.
Well, I think this is actually a good spot for us to break for our first segment, Itzhak. We have a lot more to talk about in part 2 coming up. But in concluding part 1, how can our listeners and our viewers get in touch with you and find out more about what you do?
So I have a website like many others, and it's just my name, itzhakbeery.com.
And that is ITZHAKBEERY.
Yes, and you can listen to a lot of my podcasts and videos, interviews. You can read many of my articles on different subjects. Many of them maybe a little controversial in our community, but and also to see the events that I'm doing around the world. So I travel a lot, so you can follow me.
Wonderful. Well, we have so much more to talk about. Thank you, Itzhak Beery, for part 1, and thank you, everyone, for listening and viewing.